Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there, so please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money, so check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Nile. And this week, as is becoming tradition, I just want to hit you up with a little Bev check.
Nice.
What you got going on here?
Well, I guess this is sort of spoilers for this week's Patreon bonus episode, but I do have the polar blackberry mango seltzer that I'm addicted to. And it was the same thing I was drinking when we recorded that bonus episode. So
Kyle, it's not spoilers. It's an Easter egg. Now it's going to be a running bit.
True. Honestly, people could probably take our bonus episodes and our main feed episodes and go like, okay, Kyle talked about drinking this flavor of polar on this day. They could start to map out our recording schedule. I don't know why you would want to do that, but
I have no idea why you'd want to. But I also my favorite thing that I've only it took me like literally 500 episodes to realize this. I'm not sure there's ever been an episode recorded off schedule that we didn't make comment on in the episode. We lampshade when a thing that no one else would ever know so heavily, and I don't know why, but like it's a realization I had.
I think it's just sort of, it's almost like a death drive, but for podcasting, you know, we're just sort of like trying to really just put ourselves in a direction where we're just like doing the worst possible things for the show, because that's just how we talk in real life. And then there's just, that's the paradox of it, is people are like, oh, well, I like how it's like a casual conversation I'm listening to, and then it just ends up working. So here we are. Yeah. I actually ended up looking at I don't do this regularly, but I ended up looking at Apple Podcasts.
Oh shit.
Because when I was doing this episode on my end, I was on the Apple Podcasts platform looking at some people related to what we're about to talk about.
Oh, you looked into the podcast guy? Fantastic.
Yeah, a little bit. Not much. But then I looked at our page, and I you know what? I'm only going to say this one fucking time. Okay? Folks, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating out there on the podcast apps. I genuinely, we never say this on the show, ever.
No.
But if you like our show, please give us a rating, because it does make us stand out, and especially because there are comments on, like, Apple Podcasts is where we have that person who's just like, I like the podcast until they started signaling to a terrorist organization referring to Black Lives Matter. So those are the kinds of people dragging our rating down on Apple Podcasts. So please give us a rating. I'll never ask you to do this again because I don't care that much, but I don't want those people to have any sort of influence over our podcast's online fingerprint. Anyways, besides the point, I was looking at like these guys on the podcasts, and let me put it this way. They're pretty local, and one of them was much more interesting than the other one. I'll say that much. I mean, they both seem fine. I guess I should explain what we're here to do.
Yeah, we're doing a thing.
We did a thing. We did a heckin' thing, and we watched a small bean documentary called From the Beyond, My Strangeness in the Bennington Triangle.
Well, that happened.
Well, so that and I turned around in my computer chair and I was like, the documentary is right behind me, isn't it? So that's our sort of funny opening bits. So we watched this documentary, and I think this is the first time where we had multiple talking heads who were just like, the show's just like, yeah, these are podcasters. Those are the people that we're tapping into for expertise, which isn't necessary. I don't know. It's sort of a value neutral thing, but also has a high chance of being not good because podcasts are generally not good.
Yeah, it like not to speak ill of people that we respect and like, but there are a lot of very bad podcasts out there.
Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the medium. Everybody can put one out there. Every Joe Schmo with a piece of shit, Yeti mic or whatever can just put it out there, and so it's just lots of people have them, and so the quality is pretty varied. So this documentary, From the Beyond, written and directed by Seth Breedlove, really wild name. It came out this year. It's a newer documentary. So I don't know how much you looked into this guy and his filmography and the stuff that he works on. Did you do any?
A little bit.
Looking into it? Okay.
I looked over his IMDb, and I think we've watched one of his already.
I thought we maybe did too, but I didn't find it. The one that I thought we had watched was, I think it's called The Legend of Boggy Creek, the Boggy Creek Monster.
Yeah.
Something like that, because that's about the folk monster, Fouke, which is a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But it just turns out we talked about that Bigfoot on an episode many, many years ago.
Then maybe these are just I've scrolled past so many of these on Amazon Prime so many times that I just assume I've seen at least one of them. Because this guy, I didn't like. I only looked into it after we watched the documentary, and I was like, oh, it's this guy. Like all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is the newest thing from that guy that populates like. You can find his stuff on Tubi. You can find it on Prime. You can find it on. I think like YouTube has some for like free with ads. Like he is a staple of like ad-based streaming network documentary sections.
Yeah. Well, would you prefer that I lead off with what I learned about this guy and the documentary series and whatnot?
Sure. Yeah, I know it's part of a series called like Small Town Monsters or something.
Correct. Yes. So I didn't go too deep on this guy. My takeaway is that he's like a less evil, more cryptid focused version of Jeremy Corbell. I guess just because he traffics in the same kind of documentary making, at least to my mind. But I think he's more prolific than Corbell, as far as I can tell. Because they put out a lot of these, and they are a team. And like you said, they're called Small Town Monsters. They have a website. You can go check it out. They publish stuff too. And they have a YouTube. And the YouTube is tons. They are just churning out content that I'm assuming makes them money. They get 30 to 50,000 views on things, and a lot of it's focused on Bigfoot. Now, because it's a team, and I didn't like watch the YouTube videos. I kind of just scanned their channel and looked at it. I think that the YouTube videos are maybe just like a different part of the team, but sometimes Breedlove shows up and does stuff on there too. So they got like a little mini empire within this cottage industry of supernatural, cryptid, UFO conspiracy documentary filmmaking. And so that's basically what's going on here. I think my takeaway is that they kind of are able to punch above their weight class a little bit and are consistent about putting out things that are a little bit better than your average, straight to streaming services hour-long documentary about aliens and Bigfoot. Like that's what I think lets them be what they are.
I think these are pretty competent. Like it came off competent. It like not remarkable, not intensely thorough, but competent, and like the kind of thing that I would watch if it was on the Discovery Channel, you know?
Yeah. So I one of the things that gets brought up online is about whether or not Breedlove believes in the stuff that he's putting documentaries out about. So his views over the years, so he was asked in multiple interviews all the way back in 2018, they asked him about it, and here's what he said when they were like, do you believe in this stuff? He said this: "The simplest answer is I want to believe, but my confounded brain just won't let me accept everything I hear. I have too many questions as to how some of the phenomena could exist without definitive proof being offered for their existence. Having said that, I tend to believe that people I interview have experienced what they claim to experience more than I disbelieve them. So I think continuing to look into these subjects and seek answers to them is important." And then in 2022... they ask him, because he's doing a Mothman documentary, and you can find news clips of him talking with about this documentary online. And they ask him a pretty similar question about what he believes, and he says this: "Honestly, with the stuff we look into, it is completely irrelevant if it is real. We are exploring the culture that grows up around these stories. We are exploring the ways the stories can change and evolve with time and become something entirely different from what they started as. We are exploring the way that stories impact a generation of people. At the end of the day, the factual reality of the Mothman does not matter to me. That is not the story that I am interested in." And he said stuff like, it's about the human story, and there's the whole thing, too, where people want to call this horror. He gives an interview a couple years ago, I think in 2022, with Bloody Disgusting.
Sure.
Which, that's a horror
like a major
magazine.
major horror hub. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also where he reveals that he had his own encounter with what he thinks was a Sasquatch in Ohio. So on the one hand, he's saying all this stuff about, I want to believe, and he's also trying to argue that they're unbiased, but he also has had this encounter. Just to point out, I'm not saying they're not sort of aiming to be unbiased, and I do think that this documentary in particular, it doesn't do too much to go out of its way to, force your opinion too much, but it isn't not doing that. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, I think like the second quote that you gave there when he was talking about Mothman was what I kind of expected coming out of this documentary, where it's like, it doesn't matter whether or not the stories are true. I think these people have these tales and they're worth talking about and worth considering. And because like that was the thing that I really found most charming about this documentary, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, is this like, there was this sense of framing it around Cipro as like the main source of where all this stuff comes from. And then you have everybody else, their versions were always like one step beyond what Cipro said. Yeah. And there was a bunch of stuff that Cipro wouldn't stand behind that they would talk about. And it really felt like this documentary was like, this stuff is fun folklore, and is stuff that is important to the local culture of this area, and trying to abstract it out into the larger world, into this larger thing of being on the internet and being discussed on Mental Floss, doesn't really serve anybody and doesn't really accomplish much. Like it was interesting in that way. I
agree.
So I liked that. That was really charming to me.
Yeah, so the thing that it says on their website for Small Town Monsters is that they're very interested in documenting small town folklore and culture and things like that, and these sort of weird stories that seem to permeate small town America. So I feel like that being their goal, at least with this documentary. I can't speak to anything else because I really don't think we've seen. Yeah,
I think somehow we haven't watched any of the other ones.
But hey, there's a rich vein there, it turns out.
So does anyone want a really long Patreon series? No.
Well, so I think that the goal of trying to capture what you described about the small town culture and folklore and stuff. I think that is really interesting, and they are kind of doing that. I will say, I looked at some of their other stuff. First of all, if you go to the IMDb, this guy did a lot of stuff with Bigfoot. Like, Bigfoot is their thing. These guys love Bigfoot, and who can blame them? They're very cryptozoology focused. Yeah. I was sort of trying to see. They have a couple of UFO and alien things. One of the more recent UFO, I think it's a series called On the Trail of UFOs, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
They're putting that out as well. And I don't know. I watched the trailer. On the one hand, they're doing the thing that every single fucking UFO documentary of the last 10 years has been doing, where they're just talking about the oncoming disclosure in the U.S. government's involvement and all the bullshit with those, like, you know, the Lou Elizondo types, which I just, like, I don't care about that perspective of that story. I simply cannot bring myself to give a fuck about that miasma of ufology. I would really love to see somebody tackle, maybe just like take one of those people and try to find out as much as they can about that individual. You could maybe do that with Lou Elizondo. I seem to recall reading something about how Lou Elizondo's father was maybe involved in some Cold War antics in South America. You know, he's an intelligence asset. Like, that could be interesting, maybe. But anyways, besides the point, I was watching this trailer, so it was half that, and then it was interviews with locals. And one of the people, they got an interview with Indiana's own Debbie Cobble, who I covered a while back.
Oh, shit. Cool.
You know, I'm actually, end of this month, I'm gonna jump onto an event with Debbie Cobble. I have it in my mind that I'm going to somehow, you know, speak with her and you know, get something fresh from her, because she you know, she's one of the people who met with Bud Hopkins. So I'll let everybody know how that goes. But she's doing an event, so she's on there. So I don't know. I can only speak to this documentary, but looking at the other stuff, maybe the cryptozoology stuff is more interesting. I don't know exactly what their UFO... This is actually one of the most baffling things about the documentary to me. I don't know what their stance on the UFO phenomenon is exactly, because one of the big things... And maybe we can just get this out of the way right now.
Yeah, let's talk about the UFO portion of this documentary, because this is one of my other favorite things about this whole documentary. Please go.
It's very weird, because they basically say there's lots of discussion about UFOs in this area. That's true. I've definitely read about UFOs in Vermont and this sort of... I don't know whether I've read specifically the location that is the subject of the documentary, this triangular area, this amorphous area in Vermont, that they call the Bennington Triangle. But I have definitely read about UFO stuff in this area. The thing is, in the documentary, they will kind of nod towards the UFO phenomenon and talk about people witnessing them in the skies of Vermont and in this area. But then they say twice in the documentary, we couldn't get anybody who claimed to be a witness to UFOs in this area to come forward and give an interview with the documentary. Now, Is that because they don't really make any hard implication here, but I think you're supposed to read into that as like, oh, people are too scared to come forward with their UFO stories, but it doesn't really try to do that to you. They're just saying like, yeah, we couldn't get anyone, and I found that so odd.
I kind of took that a slightly different way, and let me go ahead and run through this, because right before that, they are talking about how the story, like the whole idea of the Bennington Triangle took on a new facet when it started getting discussed online and like jumped out of the local area. Mm-hmm. And they also then said that a lot of the UFO stuff didn't happen around the time of the disappearances. It only really started multiple decades later, tying it to this, like, it felt like how it all felt was they were almost implying that like most of the UFO stuff around there is not reported by or involved with anyone who's actually local to the area, and it's something that is being grafted onto this because the Bennington Triangle became an internet darling.
Yeah,
You know?
I suppose. Yeah, they do kind of say that in general. They do kind of nod in general to this idea that all these things are retrofitted. I mean, depending on who you're talking to, as
Yes.
who's a talking head, that these things get retrofitted onto the area because, like, it's almost like self-manifesting, just because of these folkloric tales that surround the area of weird things that have no known origin point, but it might be from this or it might be from that, or just the fact that the local news would sort of take a thing and be like, this comes from Native American mythology, and then the researchers go, where did you find that? Because we're not finding anything about that being a Native American myth. And so it's just a confluence of weird stories with no good origin point that sort of then you can retrofit whatever you want onto. I mean, this is sort of how the vile vortices idea goes in a way.
Yeah.
You know, where you can take, if enough weird things are associated with an area, then you can just start saying, you know, this is where the UFOs, the ghosts, the aliens, everything congregates here.
They use the term window area, which I guess is a John Keel thing.
Yeah, Keel.
In this documentary, they name check that, and it's because, like, what's funny is this documentary really kind of felt like one of the most skeptical ones that we've watched in a while. When we're taking down the whole CIA UFO stuff, that's a different kind of skeptical. But the filmmakers felt very skeptical about the validity of this whole thing in terms of how, like, everything was presented in this kind of like, this is fun local flavor. It's not really anything beyond that. And which is interesting for something like this, and it makes me curious if that's how they, because, like, there is something like, I don't know, you can discount a lot if you just call it local folklore. Like, you don't have to have a lot of backup, you don't have to like really consider it seriously. It defangs it in a way, but it also I think some of it, I don't know. I like it. I think it's cool.
Local folklore. It's local folklore that has, you know, taken on a life of its own and really built up stories in the heads of the people who are hearing the folklore. You know, I know that sounds like I'm restating what folklore is, but it's something a little bit more than that, where it becomes real, you know, for a lot of the people in the area.
Yeah, it's almost like a thought form. Like it's
an egregore or something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to say for sure how skeptical it is. Although, one, after hearing a little bit about Breedlove talk about how, like, we're just interested in these small town stories, but also he's had his Bigfoot experience. So I think he's somewhat of a believer, but not a hard and fast believer. But then, like you said, centering it around Citro. Joseph Citro, who we should talk about. Centering around this guy does sort of give you a sense of, like, you don't have to believe in this stuff if it is too fantastical for you. But I also think it's sort of not telling you not to believe as well.
No,
you know,
I think that's fair. I really like Citro. Was a really fun presence in this movie for me. Like, I think we should, to kind of set up some of the stuff that we're talking about. Let's talk about the man-eating rock, because that is, I feel like, that's a standout moment in this documentary, and also I think indicative of how this documentary treats things, the other stories that it talks about, in the way that I was kind of mentioning earlier. So, what, Kyle? Do you want to explain what the man-eating rock is?
Well, it's a little it's a little does what it says on the tin. It is a stone. It is a large stone that supposedly devours people whole. And it's it's one of the accounts that is in this guy Joseph Citro's book, which he wrote in the 90s. So Joseph Citro's whole thing is that he was one of the first people, if not the first, to compile stories of the supernatural, folklore about cryptids, etc., into one book about this particular area. And I think he went on the radio and on the fly coined the phrase the Bennington Triangle, where he was. This is where you get the window areas thing, because he was thinking of John Keel's window areas where just strange things happen to happen more often in these areas. And then he was, of course, referencing the Bermuda Triangle, right? So this is the guy. He's in a way, he is the reason this documentary exists, right? So he tells there's a story that goes around about this giant stone that if you go and stand on it in this forest, it'll just eat you and you'll be disappeared. What makes it interesting is that there are no authentic native accounts of this story, but there is just a folklore that seems to spring up out of nowhere. There's no way to determine where this story came from. Some people will say, we have this local tribe, the Abenaki, but again, actual researchers say there's nothing in the tribe, in their folklore that we are aware of, that accounts for this.
And a couple things that I think were interesting about this. They specifically in all of the lore say no one knows where this rock is, but somewhere on this mountain, there was a Glastonbury Mountain, is this rock that if you stand on it, it will just eat you whole. It's presented very, very matter-of-factly like that, where it just like, and then it goes back on to Citro, who, as they start to try to unravel this Abenaki thing, he straight up says, I went back through all my notes. I straight up cannot find where I got this story from. I don't even know. And like he kind of disputes the Abenaki origin a little bit, but it mostly is just like, somebody told it to me. I do not know where. It is so much of a sourceless legend in that way. And I think that like they put this really early in the documentary, I think for a reason, because I think like it's showing the level of salt that should be put on Citro's accounts. Like he is just chronicling things that were told to him. He is not advocating any of it. He's not saying any of it is real. He's not saying any of it is not real.
He's just
these are fun stories.
Yeah. I think he specifically says that it has no known origin point. And I think that I wrote down the quote. He said that the story was inventions. Oh, sorry. This is actually about a different thing, but it was what I was talking about earlier. Actually, I'll save that. So
about the Four Winds thing is what
it was the Four Winds.
Yeah.
The Four Winds thing. But he basically says there's no known origin for this thing. But what I like about how he says about it is like, I know I heard this story somewhere. Somebody told it to me, or I read it somewhere, but I don't remember where that was or who from. And that seems to be how the story spreads. So that's the story exists in this state of no origin and being whispered to somebody who forgets who told it to them, and it just keeps spreading. So that's its origin point, is a totally just decentralized folklore thing. And that's interesting. And then I think, so they show this guy say, it could, I have no explanation for this, and I don't think that I think he does at one point say, I don't think there's a stone eating people in the forest.
Yeah.
But then they put like the podcasters in there as well, the other talking heads. And I think one of them says something like, well, the stone, I've heard stories that it could be a portal to another world.
Yeah, it's not like a creature. It's more like a portal.
Yes. So they do show some of the more, woo-woo angles to some of these things as well.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a game of telephone going between two generations of people into this thing in the way that a lot of these stories get told. And it makes for an interesting watch for me.
Yeah. Just before we move on, I wanted to mention that a couple of our talking heads who will pop up again and again. So we had Jamie Franklin, who is the Bennington Museum curator and is wearing an incredible combo of a flashy button-up of a cow being abducted by a UFO plus a fedora. So that guy's cool. Then we have Nick Willard, who is one of our two podcasters. This is the show, so he's from a show called Almost Canon. I'd actually heard of this before. It describes itself as being about the paranormal and quote-unquote true horror. So it's true horror stories. I didn't get the impression that this necessarily meant, true crime, serial killer, murder, whatever. He just seems to do a lot of interviews with people who claim to experience the paranormal or cryptid or whatever. I think I'm more inclined to listen to this podcast. The other one was oh geez, I have it written down here somewhere. I wrote these things down in order of appearance.
Sure.
Paul Dusky from a show called Haunted Vermont, which is the local one. It's exactly what it sounds like. The audio, when I kind of dipped into this one, I was having trouble listening to some of it because the audio quality varied quite a bit. But, it's probably interesting local stuff for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like seeing stuff like those books where it's just like weird whatever town, city or whatever. There's like the Weird Indiana and weird. Those are fun. That there's a certain thing that I have a fondness for, which I think this documentary at large kind of falls into, which is like popcorn conspiracy stuff or popcorn strangeness, where like you're not going for like the most in-depth research and information, and you're I guess it's kind of like our show, but it's. But I think it's fun. It's where like, because if you, a lot of times when it leaves you just enough that things are interesting and kind of mysterious, and then you can either choose to look more into it or not and remove that mystery for you. And I think it's very fun.
Yeah, well, one of the things that he was saying in one of the clips that I watched, Breedlove, he was saying that sometimes they have sometimes when they interview a subject for a documentary, they make a point to do it for maybe 10 minutes. They just say, hey, we want to know about this one thing. Give us your spiel on it. And then they're just done. They're just done doing it. So they don't like sit and get a ton of footage of each person that they're talking to. At least this is how he presented it. You can kind of almost feel in some cases, especially when they start getting into witness accounts of various things, that it does sort of feel a little off the cuff, like I'm just telling you off the top of my head how I remember this story, which if you're trying to just document local folklore and weird stories, that does make a lot of sense. It works. Also, I forgot to mention this. They have a documentary from a while ago called On the Trail of Champ. I think this is also how I first heard of one of their films, because I think Garrett told me about On the Trail of Champ.
Sure.
Which is, obviously Lake Champlain Monster. They also had one about, they have a documentary called Siege of Ape Canyon. Did you see this?
I scrolled past that one, yeah.
That's the one about the prospectors who got into a war with Bigfoot.
Oh shit! Okay, I gotta watch that one then.
That one might be fun to check out. I found another angle that I thought was really interesting, because they bring it up at the start of the movie and at the end about how wind seems to be a factor, like mysterious weather is a thing that sort of recurs in a lot of stories, and so it's almost like the sense of like, if you feel a gust of wind when you're out in this area, the story is coming with it. Like if you've picked up folklore from this region and you're hit with a gust of air, suddenly you're reminded, like you are now in the world of the Bennington Triangle, It's an interesting way to talk about it, and it was another one of those things where they were saying that there's this story that goes around of the four winds meeting in this one location in the triangle, and in downtown Bennington, and that because of the four winds meeting here, the Native American population avoided going there because it was cursed or something.
Yep.
And Citro is like, okay, well, which we're about to get into the disappearances, because there were somewhat famous disappearances in this area, and he says that this is the kind of thing that they then take and incorporate into the disappearance stories because you want an explanation. And he said, this is where he says this was an invention by reporters to retrofit and explain the mystery, because there's nothing in the Native American folklore here that suggests that this is a thing, that the four winds are a cursed location in Bennington, right? Like, so you can take these.
Like, yeah, it's a thing that was made up to like retroactively say why they were able to kick the Native Americans off the land. Like there's like a quick flash of like, yeah, we basically just like stole their land and said they were scared of it. And it's a nice little touch. I like it.
Yeah. So this was the first permanent settlement in Bennington, right? In 1761, where the mayor of Bennington, the first mayor, whatever his title was, they have apparently journals that say that there were these, they wrote down about mysterious screams and shadows in the woods and whatnot, and mysterious orbs of light. But also they, kicked out the native population because the four winds, forbidding winds. So one of the things that they talk about for a good chunk of this documentary is about these disappearances in the 40s and 50s.
Yes.
And Citro sort of sees what he describes as a pattern among these. Now, I found that a little interesting because I was trying to see the through line between all five of these, which I didn't quite understand. But there are some weird, almost maybe coincidences between these stories. But they're all. But the other thing is like they're also different enough that they don't feel like a pattern. You know what I mean? They even point this out.
They make a specific note about how, like, so there were 5 original disappearances that they're talking about here. None of them really share a lot of demographic information, or there was no social connections or anything. This all happens over the course of what, like 53 or 40, 53. 43 to 52 or something.
So they connect the one from 43 later in the documentary.
Yeah.
The ones that they were talking about, I think, were 46 to 53, I think.
Yeah. 40s and the 50s is when we're talking about here. And like there's something to be said about the fact that sometimes people go missing in the woods at that point. And so it's like when you look into the Bermuda Triangle thing and you find out that like by a square mile or whatever, there's not more disappearances there than most other places around the world and in the sea. Like it just is, it's entirely made up. But it's interesting in the fact that like there are a couple that they will tie together because like 2 disappeared almost on the same spot, like 2 disappeared within like 2 weeks of each other. There are these like kind of connections that they make that turn it into something that is tantalizing without ever, as they say, making sense to be the work of one serial killer.
Yeah, well, and so I think the main pattern with these is the idea that there are no answers forthcoming. Yeah. There's no, like, in general, like, for pretty much all of these, there's no body, really, there's one that has a body, which is, I think, why it's not considered a part of the original 5, even though it predates them.
No, one of the original 5 was, the woman was found, like, 6 months later.
They did find the one woman, but then everybody else's bodies they didn't find. But then there was the 1943 one you were talking about, was the one where they found the body of a hunter, and he had been completely crushed in his abdomen, basically.
Yeah.
And his ribs were broken, and his gun was laid at his side, and he was propped up against a tree.
And I quote, he was hugged to death.
He was hugged to death. And what I love about that one, too, which, again, is the way these stories are taken, depending on your beliefs, whether you're a Citro or a podcaster. Because they basically say, well, the official explanation is a bear. And you hear that and you go, oh, well, bears are really big. I can see that. And then you get the local Vermont paranormal stories podcaster, and he goes, bears can't actually do that. So what was it? So, I mean, can a bear do that? I don't actually know. But I do find it really funny that he just sort of, again, it also just feels like that's his first sort of response to talking about that story, is like, the official story, that's not possible. They don't elaborate on it, but I'd be curious to know.
Can a bear hug a man to death?
Can a bear hug a man to death? If a bear hugs a man to death in the woods and nobody's around to see it, did it even happen? Is sort of the question I'm asking. But let me go over these original disappearances here, because they are interesting. It reminds me of Missing 411, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised
100%.
if what's his name over at Missing 411, the absolute fraud that he is. that guy, oh my god, I follow that guy.
Never do an episode on your
Paulides.
heroes.
He is he sucks so bad. David Paulides, but Missing 411's fun to read, but he as a person he's just awful. But I wouldn't be surprised if some of this was incorporated into his Missing 411 stuff. So we have Mitty Rivers, who is a hunter and a fisherman, and he's going on a hunting expedition, guiding a group through the forest. He goes away from the group, and then when they realize he's just gone, he's disappeared, the only thing they ever find left behind by this guy is a single bullet.
Yeah, not a casing.
Not a casing,
bullet.
just a bullet. Apparently hundreds of people searched for this guy, and he was just never found. Then there's Paula Weldon, 18-year-old student at Bennington College. She goes out for a hike unprepared. She's seen by an older couple once, so we have people who know they saw her out there, but then she vanishes, never to be seen again. This one is a case that apparently Citro was very interested in, because he talks about how she had a father who was extremely aggressive about trying to find her, and they did a very aggressive search to try and figure out what happened. And at the time, they didn't have state police. So this led to a sort of inadequate search, according to Citro. And the result was... Yeah, go ahead. You can take it.
They founded the fucking state police because of this case, supposedly.
That's what he says. Yeah.
I did not confirm that claim anywhere. But it like, due to the inability to conduct a proper search to this dad's thought, we have state police.
Yeah, and they were tapping into state like police people from neighboring places to try and make the search more robust, and it just I don't know, it sounds like it, the way they describe it, it's like it just didn't work out, and it sort of fell apart.
Who was it that insinuated that maybe she had to leave because she was pregnant?
Well, Citro says that that's a story that he had heard.
Okay.
That's one of the rumors that crops up, or that he has read people talk about this, and that they have their theories, right? And that he's read somebody say, oh, there was a professor got her pregnant at the college, a professor that was maybe in one of her classes, and needed to disappear her because he got her pregnant. This one is this. Then there's this one, and this one I think is almost the last two are the weirdest, I think. Or these next two, I should say. One guy, a veteran, I want to say he was in his late 60s, early 70s when they were talking about him. This dude fucking vanishes from a bus. He gets on the bus, never gets off. His name's James Tedford. Multiple people see him. All that's left are the belongings that he took onto the bus seat, and he's never found. Like, there's They make it sound like there's no documentation of him getting off the bus either. He just disappears.
Yeah.
And that's weird. Obviously, that's obviously weird. And it's again still in this Bennington Triangle area. And then there's Paul Jepson. And Paul Jepson is the little boy, 8 years old. And this is one of those things where I don't know where this little factoid came from, but they claim in the documentary that he had been telling his family leading up to his disappearance that he felt he was being pulled to the mountain like he had to go there.
Yep.
Which is obviously a creepy detail. And he was... It's funny the way
they go to the mountain, Papa. Like, just imagine a kid. It's fucking weird.
Mom, Dad, I'm in a vortex, like a vile vortex. Again, this is also why... you can, after you hear that he does these quick interviews with people, to not eat up too much of their time and to not, make them anxious, which is, it reads so, like, the way they tell the stories are so, like, the passing along of folklore, right? Because they basically they state that, they say he told his parents that he had to go to the mountain. He was with his mom one morning and she was taking care of some animals, whatever that means, and then the boy disappears from their truck and they never see him again. Yep. And that's all they say about this story. And I guess they sent oh no, there's more. They sent dogs to try and track him, and the trail ended, apparently, in the same spot that Paula Weldon, the 18-year-old college student, went missing. And then we have one more that's there's Frida Langer, who was the older woman who disappeared in a way that was similar to Mitty Rivers. And according to the documentary, she knew the area well. She hiked pretty regularly, so she goes on a hike with a cousin. She goes missing for 2 weeks. She goes missing 2 weeks after Paul Jepson, the boy, goes missing. So apparently, while they were out on the hike, she had fallen into a brook. She was wet. She leaves to go change her clothes at, I think, a campsite, and then never returns. But this is the one who reappears as a corpse.
After the winter,
months later, and the reason they find it weird is that she is a pretty good distance away from where she was last seen, and in a spot that had been thoroughly searched. Again, missing 411 vibes all over this. Body's in such a state of decay that the coroner can't determine a cause of death. So, no answers forthcoming still, but we do have a body. And the thing that they're saying here is that people going missing and not being found is actually relatively rare. Like, people, they were sort of saying how people will go missing, but usually people end up found. In fact, the framing device of the whole documentary is a guy who went missing and was found and had a weird experience during his disappearance. So they're basically saying that this is rare, so it's rare to have it clustered in this time frame the way it is. It's a weird situation to have that many people missing permanently, but it's extra weird that there's no bodies. That's what the documentary is saying. Is that how this stuff plays out? I don't really know, because I don't have a lot of, like, I feel like we need to maybe consult with Garrett on how, like, surely somebody has done some sort of study on how easy it is for a human being to go missing permanently in such a way that you don't find a body. Like, how hard is that to do?
Yeah, it is something that I, like, how there's a certain point where you just learn that it's actually, like, pretty easy to rip off an ear. There are certain things that you just, like, you never really consider it. And then when you're met with the information, it's like, oh, that's just like a different thing now. I understand the world a little differently now.
Yeah, my perspective on ears has changed.
Yeah, and so I think, like, knowing the likelihood of going missing and no one ever finding a body might be one of those pieces of information.
Yeah, that is definitely a kind of thing that would change how you feel about, even if slightly, about living in the world.
Because, like, how high of a percentage chance do you want to roll that dice on?
It obviously is, geographically dependent, but they are talking about... One of my favorite parts about this documentary, actually, is how much of it is a sort of really, really brief skimming overview of how this area became the way it was, because it's almost entirely abandoned by humans, apparently. They basically attempted to turn this somewhat remote area into a resort town, and it kind of flopped, and a flood took out one of those oh my god, what is it, like the railway or whatever that they were building for that resort town, and it's an interesting little quick overview with a lot of just, nice shots of the area.
But it establishes how, like, this is not a well-populated area. This is not a place that, like, is booming. And it makes it. It also talks about how, like, the whole Glastonbury area, you can't really drive there. Like, the mountain doesn't have, like, a lot of roads. So in at large, this place is incredibly remote feeling. When it comes, and that's kind of why these stories have a tendency to propagate.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting that this sort of I don't know, this attempt to capitalize on the location is like what results in it becoming this almost unlivable space for humans. I mean, I guess that's not exactly why it became that way, but it was just the failed attempt to turn it into something more than it actually is. It's a little bit of that sense of, like, nature revolting against us encroaching on it,
Yeah.
So anyways, but that is a part of the documentary as well. Anyways, where the fuck were we?
We're into some of the I guess we can, like, we okay. So there is a little bit of a button on the missing persons stuff that we can go through.
Oh,
quickly.
Is this the serial killer thing?
Well, it's a little bit of that, but it's the Cairns and then, like, the fact that officially in the state of Vermont there are only 38 missing persons listed, and only one of them is on that 5 list, like, and that's not definitive or anything, but it's interesting how much this documentary is like, hey, not all this stuff lines up. I don't know what to do with it. Maybe you can draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, also, they talk about the New England Antiquities Research Association, which I don't remember what episode I talked about this on, but I talked about these guys and the Cairns in an episode.
I thought it seemed familiar.
Yeah, and their determination, I don't remember. I don't know if I came away from NERA, as the organization is called. I don't know if I came away feeling like their determination about the Cairns was the most definitive one, but they're one of the big names researching it. And the reason I'm a little not suspicious, but I guess skeptical, is just because NERA gets roped, like their quote-unquote official findings gets roped into a lot of the more supernatural explanations of the Cairns. And I think they're also, it's a citizen-led group. It's a civilian group. It's not, that's the word I was looking for. Anyways, point is, they talk about these guys and say, like, well, they determine that they're ancient. They probably predate the local Native American tribes, and also they were probably used for ritualistic purposes. And I would love to know how we know that, or have made that determination. But that's what they're claiming. Yeah. And this is also, again, where we get the podcast guys coming on and saying, like, well, if you walk through these, they're a gateway to other worlds. They're interdimensional gateways. Like, this is like a way to actually just step into the spirit world or whatever the fuck. So that's a perspective you can have, I suppose. But yeah, they're mysterious, and they're just one of another. They are mysterious. I'll give them that. It is weird. Yeah. Like, we don't know who placed them because there's no evidence of the Abenaki putting them there.
In the log of just things they throw out once and never return to, they say that there's some story that there's a pyramid buried under Glastonbury Mountain that's like tied to the mystical forces, which I think might be tied to like some of the Wild Vortices type stuff. Like it's, but they do not expand on that. They just say that there's some people believe there's a pyramid under there.
Yeah, I mean,
sure,
I like to believe that when we nuked ourselves hundreds of years ago and reset the world and destroyed Yggdrasil and all that stuff, eventually the sediment and everything that covered the earth covered up the existence of the pyramids that acted as our ley lines that pulled supernatural energy to the earth. And it's still, that's why, they're buried, we can't see them, but there's still this supernatural activity happening on those spots, even though we can't see the pyramids that do it, That's my
I'm
theory,
glad we're
anyway.
finally saying this. It's been hidden too long. We finally got the hidden truth of reality.
I don't know, I really don't know why. I love all those theories that we somehow had nukes hundreds of years ago and destroyed the earth, and this is another. It's very Dark Souls. It feels like we're trying to do Dark Souls IRL. Vid games IRL. So look, I will say they talk about this stuff, but they also talk about ghosts. Something that gets a recurring theme, a recurring sentiment that comes up is the idea of fact and fiction twisting together until it's indistinguishable. Which, also just stating that there might be a pyramid beneath the Bennington Triangle. That is one way to just throw that out there and let fact and fiction duke it out, basically. So they get into the paranormal from here. And I do really like this stuff. They just start listing off different kinds of activity that's supposedly happened in the area. The big one is Earth level orbs, like orbs of light that float around in the tree line, which would then differentiate them from UFOs in a way, because UFOs tend to be high up in the sky and they seem to move. In my understanding is that the Earth level lights almost move in a flitting natural way, and UFOs tend to seem more like a manned object, right? And they're higher up. Sometimes, UFOs come down, but look, it's sort of like that thing about the judge, making that statement about what is and isn't pornography, and he's like, it is, I know it when I see it. Yeah. That's the difference between Earth level lights and UFOs. So,
Sure.
So also, Bennington College apparently has a ton of paranormal activity. Lady in White, Phantom Horseman on a nearby bridge, poltergeist ghost activity, shadow people. They got it. They got it all. And this is where they start bringing in some accounts of people who claim to have witnessed things. But they start with one of the podcast guys, Nick Willard, where he's like, this happened to my uncle once. He actually does this happened to my cousin story, where he says, my uncle lived in a haunted house, and they show off this picture of like a shadow person standing over his uncle, and that there was a demonic presence in his cousin's room.
Yeah, and you get the actual photo tag on the ghost photo that they show, which is I don't know how far to take that one, but it there is a shadow in the middle of it, for sure.
If it's real, it's creepy in a way, I guess. But then they said something. I need to see if I can figure out a way to how common this phenomenon is with the paranormal, because he says, I think that the presence in my cousin's room was demonic because he got the worst of it. The thing would roar at him. And then he said something that instantly, I've brought this up on the show before, but he says something that instantly made me remember a childhood thing that happened to me, where he says that this presence would imitate two old ladies talking back and forth. Mm-hmm. And immediately I was reminded of, I've told this story on the show before, one of the creepiest experiences from when I was a kid, where I remember waking up in my childhood bedroom and the door was open for my room, which was not typically what I would do. And I remember waking up and I could hear voices that I couldn't understand speaking in the kitchen in the dark. And I think they were in a language I couldn't understand. And I remember hearing that and being really scared and calling out to, thinking maybe it was my mom and my dad. And as soon as I called out, the voices just stopped and never came back. And I remember getting out of my bed and running to the door and shutting it and being so fucking scared. So I need to see if there's like a disembodied voices style of paranormal activity thing that I could look into, because I personally don't think it was paranormal activity that I was experiencing, but I would be very interested to see how regular an occurrence this is for people who believe in that stuff. Anyways, totally besides the point. Creepy story for me. Still kind of gives me the chills when I think about it. Even though I don't think it was ghosts, it still makes me scared.
You don't know what it was, so
I don't. I have my theories. I've said this on the show before. I'll say it again. I think that when I was young, in the dark, I would visually and auditory. I would have hearing. I would hear disembodied things and see things that weren't there. I would hallucinate in the dark specifically, and I think it's a bit of a anxious thing. So for me, that's my explanation for it. But maybe it was just fucking ghosts, Yeah.
I get that. I have much the same thing. So.
It doesn't really happen to me anymore is the thing. Now I just have sleep paralysis, which is a different kind of scary. Recently I straight up have. The other night, I woke up punching the air because I thought a woman was floating above me, and then just last night, I took my pillow. I don't remember what I saw, but I took my pillow and I woke up throwing it in front of me.
Wow!
And it's only when I sleep on my back. Anyways,
yeah, that's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Sleeping on your back is you have worse nightmares and sleep paralysis.
I've hit a partner before in bed, unfortunately. One time, they woke me up and they were like, "You just smacked this shit out of me." So I try not to sleep on my back because I specifically, just for whatever reason, get a plague of sleep paralysis when I do, which I didn't have when I was younger, but I've always slept on my belly. Anyways, I am really, really, really getting besides the point here. There are ghosts in the Bennington Triangle.
Yep.
And they start bringing up these different people. So one of the witnesses is Andy Curtis. He tells a story. This is a very classic one. I feel like I've heard this story a million times, of a young child running to the foot of the stairs at their house and freezing when they see at the top of the stairs a woman who is sort of hovering in a nightgown and she has no feet.
Yes.
And he freaks out and runs away. And he says he never saw anything like that ever again. So that's the first guy that we get, and then it immediately moves on to talking. They do jump around a lot because from here they start talking about, is this place cursed? Are there wormholes here? They just casually mention secret experiments, and then they start, which this is sort of the lead into like, hey, people see UFOs here apparently, but like we said, they kind of stop there and say, we can't get anybody to talk about UFOs for our documentary. Yeah. But they bring up a couple examples. Like they name drop the Triangle UFO and stuff like that. And then we get another witness, George Clifford. This guy, this is going to be for so few of the people listening to the show, but whatever. This guy looks like if Lotax had gone on to live another 15 to 20 years. All right. He tells a story from 2023 when this story's pretty weird. This is the guy who picks up the hitchhiking girl.
Yeah, he owns an apple orchard.
Or I guess I took it as hitchhiking, but then he later said, did he say hitchhiker? Yeah. Because he said something to the effect of like, oh, I bus people around. So it almost sounds like it was a job. I don't know.
I think he does, like, he sounded like he did some stuff with hikers and stuff.
Like a local pre-Uber.
Yeah, like it wasn't 100% clear, but I took it as like he takes people out on the trails sometimes and like leads people around, and then he also just like helps people that are in the woods. I guess I don't know. He
Yeah.
picked up this hitchhiking girl, coming out of the woods terrified. So that's the kind of thing he does, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's the kind of thing he does. He picks her up and he's like, what's going on? And he's I think he actually asks her, where are you planning on staying here or just going to this restaurant to eat and then going back into the woods? And she's like, fuck no, I'm out of here because they did some Blair Witch shit to me in the woods, and I'm done. There were babies crying and voices talking in overnight, and fuck that. And then he picks up a couple the next day in the same sort of situation where he's like, hey, did you have any weird experiences? And they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, well, I just picked up a girl who heard babies crying and disembodied voices. And the couple's just like, oh my God, that happened to us too. Also, my boyfriend saw Bigfoot.
Yeah. That was my favorite little
Yeah.
button. And also
Yes.
my boyfriend saw Bigfoot. I don't think the girl did. Like they straight up were like only he saw Bigfoot.
Yeah, he saw Bigfoot, and the girl's like, his girlfriend's like, oh, I saw something moving.
Yeah.
But this witness guy, George, he tells them, well, a fox can sound like a baby crying. And by the way, that's 100% true. If you've never heard a fox make weird noises, they can sound something like that. And all the people that he tells us to insist, no, it was a crying baby, not a fox. So yeah, this guy just picks people up in the area and hears them say they were haunted by the Blair Witch, basically.
Yeah, it was at this point that there was another story that I didn't write down a lot of notes on because I was getting really swept up in the fact that every interview they do, if they talk for more than 5 seconds, they start cutting to Dutch angles.
I noticed that too. It was super weird.
And like I get that because it's so these productions seem so low budget. But like they're trying for a level of dynamism that you can't just have a steady camera on a person for the entire interview if they talk very long, because it's a pretty quick cut documentary. And so they cut to these alternate angles where it's just straight up like, I don't know when the last time you watched, this is just the one that I always think of when I think of a thing that has way too many Dutch angles. If you go back and watch the first Thor movie that Kenneth Branagh directed, it's like every third shot is a fucking Dutch angle.
Really?
And it is wild. And this documentary is very much the same way.
I did notice that, and I thought it was really... It surprised me when I realized they kept doing the Dutch angle, and it was like quick cuts too. Like it was... They're cutting back and forth really quick. It made me think of like 90s live action radical children's programming,
Yeah.
It felt like something like that you would see on Nickelodeon in the late 90s or whatever. But yeah, it was a little odd. It took me out very briefly. They don't do it a ton, but it's there. So I mean, we don't have to go over every single story because I guess just go watch the documentary. I do think the one UFO thing I have to mention, because again, they don't talk too deep on UFOs, but they talk to this guy Paul Bartholomew, who's an author and researcher, and he's talking about the ghost lights. And then he starts to talk about how, by the way, I read about this story where a guy who owned a bunch of cows, some lights showed up and then electrocuted all the cows that he owned and killed them
inside of the barn.
The barn. Which, I think is supposed to be attributed maybe to a UFO. So that's a thing that apparently happened. So that just happened.
Yeah. And I really like this. At this point, you get the second time that they reaffirm that they were unable to get anybody to talk about UFOs on their documentary. And they end up talking about a Bennington monster sighting where he tops over a stagecoach, which the Bennington monster is Bigfoot. Like it basically.
This is the Bigfoot segment of the documentary. And here's
there's a pressing question that I have to ask.
I know what you're going to ask me, and I'm going to say yes, it is.
God damn it!
This is what was bugging me about. This is my biggest negative, I think.
there was a point where you got to this footage where they cut to the CGI looking kind of graphics Bigfoot with shining eyes that was looking around, and it was like, is this AI?
Yeah, I think it is. I believe
I think it might have been.
There is extensive use of AI in the Bigfoot segments because, why would you commission artists or whatever to why would you go and get, archival footage or anything, that has a human texture to it when you can just plug it into ChatGPT. This is I think my biggest negative with this documentary. And if you go look at their YouTube channel, it's all AI generated Bigfoot thumbnails. So,
really? God damn it.
Yeah, it's lame. This is the thing. It's lame. It's very lame. And I wish they didn't do that because so much of the rest of the documentary isn't like that. You suddenly get into the Bigfoot segment and they're just like, look, we got to get ChatGPT to pump out 50 pictures of Bigfoot, 50, holographic, those holographic cards that you would hold them and they would look they'd get into different positions depending on the angle. That's kind of what they're doing, like an After Effects sort of thing. I will say
it doesn't look very good. Like, no, it looks bad.
It does not look very good. It looks funky. Some of it does look to me almost like they had some sort of cheap CGI thing going on. Especially, there's like a recreation for one of the Bigfoot encounters. Yeah.
I'm not certain every single one was AI. But
exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if all of them are, but a good chunk of them are.
The fucking spot lamp eyes Bigfoot that just kind of looks back and forth. That one is 100%. It looked bad.
It doesn't look good. I will say, towards the end of it, one of the things that I really loved that they talked about, that I almost wish they could have gotten into a little bit more to get thoughts from everybody on this concept. But they talked about how the longer you research, I believe that this was Paul Bartholomew saying this, where he was saying that the longer you research subjects like this across the board, whether it's UFOs, cryptids, just general strangeness, the harder it becomes to compartmentalize it as different things, and it all sort of starts to blend together as if they all have the same source. Not to necessarily say they do, but it feel like the more you read about it, and the more different stuff you read, the more it feels like they have the same source. So he likened it to water, where water can be different forms. It can be ice, it can be fog, etc. But it's different manifestations of the same source is what he's saying. And I really like this idea, and I wish there was more discussed on it, but they just kind of mentioned it. I appreciate that it's there. This is such a great framing for this stuff, I think, for me. Yeah. Because it's my podcast, and I'm going to tell you what I think. I would also add that, like, one of the big catalysts, like, if we're going to talk about, we have this core element of water, right? H2O, and it can become different things depending on temperature or whatever. We should talk about the fact that one of the core catalysts for the formation of these things in folklore and in these stories is just human psychology. And I don't mean that to be dismissive of weird phenomena, just that it's an important factor to get a better picture of, like, a whole picture of what these stories and experiences are. That's my take. I don't know. How do you feel about that idea? Like, did you like that?
Yeah, I think that it goes to the concept of this kind of high strangeness. It goes to the kind of maybe ultra-terrestrial kind of crossover between UFOs and Fey folk, and this kind of, like, I don't know 100% how I fall on everything we talk about on this podcast, but that feels kind of, if there is something out there, then that feels like a decent place to start in trying to unpack it from in terms of, like, because I think most of this stuff, the way it really matters is how it reflects on the people that are engaging with it. It's kind of a sociological reflection of the anxieties and the things that you care about at that time, and so yeah, like, having it all be kind of from the same fountain, so to speak, it I like it as a framework, you know?
Yeah. Hey, here's some fucking wisdom for you. High strangeness is a reflection of the human soul. I'll say it.
Yeah.
The human spirit, I should say. Soul is a little
It's
more,
unto art.
too religious. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So this all ends, and this is also the first thing you hear at the beginning of the documentary is this guy, Dr. Bob Singley, which is such a great name to have when you're a musician.
Yep.
He's a musician and vegetable farmer who likes to hike. I, don't have any personal interaction with this guy, but I was like, I don't think I'd get along with this guy. Because he kept, he's talking, he's a lot of talk about God and bullshit that, and I'm like a hardcore atheist type, I'm like an amazing sort of atheist. So he when this guy starts the documentary off, you hear him talk about, he's describing an experience in the mountains. It ends now with him embellishing on that story where he basically gets lost because a thick fog surrounds him when he's in the middle of these mountains in the Bennington Triangle, and he ends up creating a fire and falling asleep next to it to sort of wait things out. And he wakes up and discovers that he's on Glastonbury Mountain, one of the main places of weirdness for this documentary, which would be 8 to 10 miles from his original starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I don't know how that's possible because that would be a 4-hour journey versus the 2 hours I was actually hiking before the fog rolled in. And he shows up back to his car after he figures out how to get on the proper trail again. And there's cops there who are just looking for him because apparently he was officially missing enough for the cops to come and look for him.
Yeah.
And he talks about how he sort of felt like he lost some of his senses while he was out there. It's just overall just him having a weird, confused experience in this general area. I find it interesting that this is the guy and the story chosen to bookend the whole documentary, but I guess it is a guy who had a very prolonged and particular experience that is anomalous in this area. So I guess serves to highlight what they're talking about.
And also, this whole documentary kind of starts with the Citros stuff and ends in the realm of the podcasters. And this is a story that is very recent. It was mostly propagated on the internet, and it has become what they called the modern anchor of the Bennington Triangle stuff, mm-hmm. which I think is like it. So it like if you look at my reading of this documentary, it's fitting as an ending because it's where the like local flavor folklore stuff has fully left the building, and now we're in the way that the internet looks at and consumes this stuff with this guy's story, which is like a little less fun, a little more I don't know, a different flavor for how we look at it now, like fitting for the podcasters that are on this documentary.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could easily read into his story in whatever direction you really wanted to. It's a tale of high strangeness that defies explanation. It's almost like he is a guy who in the mid-40s would have gone missing and been among the missing original 5,
Yeah.
So, geez, that's the documentary, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I think overall, I want to tentatively say I like what Breedlove and the Small Town Monsters team are doing here. Generally, that's subject to change depending on maybe watching another couple documentaries to see what they're doing. But I definitely don't like the use of AI.
Yeah, cut that shit out.
It's very jarring, especially because I feel like that there is at least competent craft happening in the rest of the film. Even though the Dutch angle thing was weird, it's like, I get it. They're an indie production, but surely you have the money to go to some cool artists, or even just one artist, and be like, we need some images for our documentary. Like, surely you can do that. Surely you can do something more interesting than just shitting some AI into your doc. That's my big suggestion.
And hey, Stephen Breedlove, if you hear this and it's not AI, send us receipts. I'll apologize, but right now,
Stephen Breedlove, who's Seth's brother, who handles
Seth.
the
Jesus.
handles
Steven
the art
did the
direction,
AI.
Steven, it was out of our hands. That's all Steven, okay? Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I do like these I like looking at the weird and the Fortean and the high strangeness as an attempt to find a holistic description of it is always very interesting to me. Try to, make a through line between all the different phenomena that's out there in these stories, but also just the fact that it is coming from this folkloric perspective grounds it in the human way that I like as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I guess that's me saying I like this.
Yeah, largely I agree with you. I like it. I think that this is good popcorn, high level, and by that I mean not going super nitty gritty detail on any one story. Content in this area. Like, I think these are pretty solid, and if you can curb the one thing that we talked about with the AI, I would watch these like as a fun kind of just like a fun thing to witness. I think they're pretty entertaining.
Well, and I would be curious to see what this stuff is like before AI took over. Mm-hmm. Because he's been doing this for like a decade.
Yeah.
So they've been making stuff for a long time.
Are we
so maybe,
peers with this guy?
In essence, in fact, I think that means he should have us on one of his programs.
Yeah.
If you're going to get fucking the Vermont podcaster who thinks that the Cairns are portals on your show, you can have these two chuckle fucks who, crack jokes about Bigfoot and stuff like that. I think I'd be happy. Look, if there's no AI too, mm-hmm. I'm happy to go on to your show and say whatever the hell you want me to. If you want me to say the whole spiel about, we nuked ourselves 300 years ago and that there's pyramids under the ground, I'm happy to do that for you.
Yeah.
It's funny because I did, after I discovered, or not discovered, but when I realized, like, oh, I'm looking at AI generated stuff here, I went and looked around on his YouTube and all this stuff, and just to see if I could get some sort of comment on AI. I did find this video where he's being interviewed for another podcast, and it's just a snippet, and he's saying, it's dangerous to lend your face and voice to television producers because they'll make you say and do anything they want with AI and clever editing. And I think he was saying this in reference to Ancient Aliens.
Sure.
Which, it's a somewhat more even-handed point to make about AI and whatnot with which is weird considering that there's just slop in this documentary. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm curious if I couldn't find anything with somebody specifically asking him like, "Hey, what's the deal with the AI in your documentaries?" Because I'm assuming this is not the first time. But
yeah, I mean because this one just came out in like April of this year. Like this is a brand spanking new. So I don't know when those elements came to play. It could have been any time in the last probably 3 to 5 years, probably more 3. But it's a little disappointing because I was really having a lot of fun with this one, and I think largely it's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I agree. It's a blemish on a generally pretty good, high level. High level is a good way. High level and folkloric view mm-hmm. of high strangeness. So, cool. Well, I guess do we have to do the fucking?
Yeah, we gotta do this thing.
We got to do it. I think you should go first because I want you to.
Yeah, I got this figured out. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
I'm
Cool.
gonna go with a movie trailer kind of. Fuck your documentary.
Okay.
You know, kind of like a populist entertainment kind of high energy kind of thing. You know.
See, I was almost reading. If you had switched up like your tone a little bit there, you were almost going into Ricola sort of territory.
Yeah.
So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and say, fuck your documentary, which you could then put that clip over a Ricola advertisement. Could be an interesting mashup.
Yeah. Ricola X It Gets Weird. Hit us up.
Yeah.
Cough drops.
I'm going to need a couple cough drops after talking for this long. Have you noticed the fucking runtime on these podcasts lately?
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked with Garrett for almost 2 hours. I got to get some Ricola.
Yeah. Or maybe a throat coat tea, you know?
Throat coat could be good, but I'm looking for a brand deal, and I don't know if throat coat is going to be really pulling in all that much monetarily, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. All right. Look, I'm Halls or nothing. I'm going going for the big fish. All right.
You want to end this one?
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all for listening. If you want to find more of the show, we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird. We're almost certainly going to be there. Go ahead and give us 5 stars and a big thumbs up on wherever you listen.
I don't want to mention this very often. Definitely give us a rating. That would be super sick. Many of you have, and for that I am very appreciative. The real fans have been out there giving us 5 stars all over the place. So check that out. We're on Blue Sky at It Gets Weird. We're on Twitch, twitch.tv/itgetsweird. I think we have an email. I have, in fact, received... We did ask, I think, 2 episodes ago if the audience likes to come. And we have received... I'll say it. We've only received yeses. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Keep sending in the emails though. You don't have to tell us all that stuff if you don't want to. You can tell us like a cool story. Maybe you encountered Bigfoot or like some mysterious earth lights or something. Just email us, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Just let us know how we should refer to you, and we might read it on the show. But if you want to support us, and I know you do, you're going to want to check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. I'm going to emphasize this. We have so much fucking bonus, like a crazy amount of bonus content, and it is only $5 a month for all of it. We have a $1 tier. That is a tip jar tier where you're saying, hey, thanks for doing what you do. Here's $1. We also have a $2 tier. You get a bonus show every other week. Nile and I do It Gets Weird TV, where we talk about weird television. We have just started The Prisoner, the 60s British spy thriller. Not spy thriller.
Sci-fi show. I mean,
sci-fi thriller thing, which has been a lot of fun so far. So check that out. We have a huge back catalog there. But if you want the most bang for your buck, you get all of our bonus content for $5 a month. It's hundreds of episodes. I don't know how many hours that is, but it's a fucking lot. I even remembered recently that we did really funny commentary tracks for some shitty movies as a group. I think the one that we were coerced into doing by our Discord community was Morbius, the Living Vampire. So, anyways, that's just the kind of shit we got on there.
What was the Roland Emmerich one?
It was Moonfall.
Moonfall,
yeah. So, look, the point is, at the $5 tier, you get tons of stuff. You will never be bored. You will have so much stuff to listen to. So check it out. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5... Oh, we also do World of Weird. I forgot I should mention that. We have another show at the $5 tier called World of Weird, where Niall and I talk about whatever we want to talk about. No rules, just right. A show about nothing. And whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday, and you get access to the Discord where you can bully us into watching movies, just like they did with Morbius. It's been a while since they've done that, but I feel like they could do it again if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think we're due for another movie run sometime soon.
We've been talking about this for a while. There's a couple movies that are on our radar, and one that I've been thinking about is Southland Tales. We've threatened that one for a hot minute.
That's a real fave of mine.
Yeah, so check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. Please support us. We really appreciate those who do. We appreciate all the people in the future who do. The people who leave and stop donating, I can only say fuck you, really. That's all I got for you. No, we appreciate that you showed up at one point, and we get it. Look, sometimes money's tight. We get it. Sometimes you know, it's hard right now. It's really hard right now, so we get it. But the least you could do for us is tell some people about It Gets Weird podcast. Do a little advertising for us, because we'll never advertise to you. That's one of the big things that we've stuck to over this entire time. We could be millionaires with the amount of money we would be making off of advertising at this point. And we said, fuck no, we're true artists. We're going to live in our shacks, and we're never going to advertise to the listener. So the least you could do is tell some people out there about our show, grow our listenership, give us our 5-star rating, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Nile.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.